Blazing Saddles wasn't supposed to work. It was too offensive, too chaotic, too insane for 1974 Hollywood. The studio executives didn't laugh. The lead actor collapsed on day one, and Mel Brooks, he was literally writing jokes at the Devil's Address, 666 Fifth Avenue. But somehow, it became a comedy masterpiece. Behind the scenes, lawsuits, real drunk actors vomiting on set, a theme song singer who had no idea he was in a comedy, and a fart scene that almost got the movie banned. Here are 20 insane facts about Blazing Saddles that prove this movie shouldn't have worked, and they're stranger than fiction. Number 1. The movie was born from a Malcolm X tribute. In the late 1960s, a young writer named Andrew Bergman sat down to write what he thought would be a serious civil rights western. His original script? Tex X, named after Malcolm X, who had taken the name El-Hajjah Malik El-Shabazz. What started as a tribute to black liberation became the most offensive comedy of the decade. Bergman had no idea his serious drama would become a vehicle for Mel Brooks to unleash chaos on Hollywood. The irony, a movie inspired by one of America's most serious civil rights leaders ended up using humor to tackle racism more effectively than most dramas ever could. Number 2. They literally wrote it at the Devil's Address. Mel Brooks wasn't joking around with the location. The majority of Blazing Saddles was written on the 6th floor of 666 Fifth Avenue in New York City. Yes, the Devil's Address, and the movie's content matched the location perfectly. Brooks and his team of writers would sit in that cursed office, crafting jokes that would make executives squirm. They had no idea they were creating comedy gold. They just knew they were writing something that would either get them fired or make them legends. And considering what came next, maybe that address had some supernatural influence after all. Number 3. The studio's first screening was a complete disaster. Picture this, a room full of Warner Brothers executives, serious men in suits, watching Blazing Saddles for the first time, and absolutely nobody laughed. Not a single chuckle. The movie looked dead on arrival. The studio was ready to bury it and pretend it never happened. Brooks watched his career flash before his eyes as the suits sat stone-faced through fart jokes and racial satire. But Brooks had one last desperate move. He set up a second screening, this time for regular studio employees, secretaries, janitors, everyday people. They laughed so hard the building shook. Warner Brothers finally realized, maybe the problem wasn't the movie, maybe it was the audience. Number 4. The fart scene almost got the movie cancelled. Brooks had numerous conflicts with Warner Brothers executives over content, the racial language, the seduction scenes, and especially that campfire flatulence scene. The studio literally tried to censor the fart scene that would become the movie's most quoted moment. They called it juvenile, disgusting, beneath cinema. Brooks fought tooth and nail to keep those beans and their musical aftermath in the film. He knew something the executives didn't. Sometimes the most juvenile joke becomes the most revolutionary. That fart scene broke a Hollywood taboo and became the first audible flatulence in cinema history, all because Brooks refused to let the suits sanitize his vision. Number 5. Even the budget was insulting. The movie cost $2.5 million to make, pocket change even for 1974, and Brooks, he netted around $50,000 for writing and directing what would become a comedy classic. Studio accounting at its finest. They gave him scraps to make a movie they thought would fail, then watched it become a cultural phenomenon. Brooks created a masterpiece on a shoestring budget, while the studio counted pennies. Sometimes the best art comes from having no money and nothing to lose. Number 6. The lead actor vomited green liquid on day 1. Gig Young was supposed to be the Waco Kid. Day 1 of shooting, they hang him upside down in the jail cell for his drunk scene. But Young wasn't acting, he was actually hammered. According to Mel Brooks, we hung him upside down, and green stuff started spewing out of his mouth. Not special effects, real vomit, real alcohol poisoning, real disaster. Young's agent tried to defend him. He's a recovering alcoholic. Brooks shot back, he's not recovered yet. Production shut down. Young sued for breach of contract, and somewhere in New York, Gene Wilder got a desperate phone call that would change his life. Number 7. Gene Wilder flew cross-country to save the movie. I sent him to the hospital, and called Gene in tears. That's how Brooks described the Gig Young disaster. His movie was dying on day 1, his lead actor was in the hospital, and Warner Brothers was probably sharpening their cancellation paper. But Wilder dropped everything, flew cross-country, showed up on set not knowing if he was saving a masterpiece or a disaster, all because his friend was crying into a phone about green vomit and studio executives. Sometimes friendship saves cinema. This was one of those times. They kept Mel Brooks' identity secret from the theme singer. Frankie Lane, legendary singer of dramatic Western themes, got a call about recording Blazing Saddles, but Brooks never told him it was a comedy. Lane thought he was singing for a serious dramatic Western. Brooks was terrified that if Lane knew the truth, he wouldn't sing with the conviction needed, so they lied, completely. Lane poured his heart into what he thought was another high noon or gunfight at the OK Corral. The result, the most dramatically sincere theme song for the most insincere movie ever made, perfect irony, achieved through perfect deception. 9. A real lawsuit started from a joke about a fake lawsuit. Harvey Korman's first day on set, he improvised a line about suing Hedy Lamarr. It was just a throwaway joke about the character's name Hedy Lamarr. Nobody thought twice about it. But the real Hedy Lamarr was watching, and she wasn't laughing. She sued Mel Brooks for using her name. The joke became reality. The fake lawsuit threat became a real legal battle. Brooks later said he was flattered by the attention. Most directors would panic. Brooks saw it as free publicity from a Hollywood legend. The method acting got dangerously real. Actors stayed in character between takes, leading to genuine racial tension on set that Brooks had to constantly manage. The racial dynamics weren't just scripted, they were happening for real among the cast and crew. Brooks used humor to diffuse potentially explosive situations, but it was walking a tightrope every single day. The movie was about racism, starring actors of different races, directed by a white Jewish comedian, during one of the most racially charged decades in American history. The fact that nobody got seriously hurt, physically or emotionally, might be the biggest miracle of the entire production. Wilder just said it, and Cleavon Little's reaction was completely genuine. He had no idea what was coming. The camera caught lightning in a bottle, a spontaneous moment between two actors that became one of the most quoted lines in comedy history. Little's confused laugh. That's a real person trying to figure out if his co-star just went off script. Sometimes the best jokes happen when nobody's trying to be funny. Count Basie was in the desert for no logical reason. Brooks convinced the legendary jazz musician to appear in the middle of nowhere, playing April in Paris to an empty desert. No explanation, no plot relevance, just pure surreal cinema gold. Basie, one of the greatest band leaders in music history, sitting in the desert with his orchestra, playing swing jazz, while cowboys ride by. It makes no sense. It doesn't need to make sense. It's perfect. That's the Brooks method. If it's weird enough, logic becomes irrelevant. 3. The campfire scene required multiple takes because everyone kept laughing. The famous farting scene was supposed to be one take. Professional actors, professional crew, professional director, but nobody could keep it together. Take after take ruined by genuine laughter, actors breaking character, crew members snorting behind the cameras. Some of that real laughter made it into the final cut, creating an unintentionally meta moment. The first audible fart scene in cinema history was also the first scene where you can hear the people making the movie trying not to lose it completely. 14. They hid a musical reference to Brooks's previous disaster. When Lili von Stupp's poster appears, listen carefully to the piano music. It's the first 4 measures of Springtime for Hitler from the producers, Brooks's previous movie that bombed so hard it nearly ended his career. A subtle callback that most audiences missed. Brooks was literally sampling his own failure and weaving it into his comeback. The confidence, or desperation to reference your biggest flop in your potential next flop is pure artistic audacity. 5. The movie invented the cinema fart joke, then had to censor itself. Blazing Saddles was the first movie to incorporate audible flatulence. They literally invented the fart joke for cinema. Then when it aired on television, they had to mute their own creation. The irony was perfect. Create something so groundbreaking that you have to immediately sanitize it for mass consumption. The bean scene worked too well. It became both legendary and unbroadcastable. Brooks had created a monster, a hilarious gaseous monster that would influence comedy for decades. 16. The movie was banned, which made it more popular. Several southern theater chains refused to show Blazing Saddles. The ban's only increased demand everywhere else. Controversy became the best marketing campaign money couldn't buy. People wanted to see what was so offensive that entire regions wouldn't show it. The forbidden fruit effect kicked in. Lines around the block in cities where it played, empty theaters in places where it did. Sometimes the best way to sell a movie is to have someone try to stop people from seeing it. 17. Richard Pryor was too controversial for this controversial movie. The studio deemed Pryor too controversial for the lead role, leading to Cleavon Little's breakthrough. Think about that irony. Richard Pryor was too edgy for a movie that featured audible farting and constant racial slurs. This was 1974, Pryor. Before the cocaine years, before the self-immolation, before the really wild and he was still too much for a movie about a black sheriff in the racist Old West. Hollywood's definition of too controversial has always been wonderfully arbitrary. Brooks admits he couldn't make it today. In recent interviews, Brooks has stated he couldn't make Blazing Saddles in today's climate. The director himself acknowledges that his masterpiece is now unmakeable, but he maintains that comedy should push boundaries and make people uncomfortable to spark important conversations. The movie worked because it used offense as a weapon against actual racism, not as a lazy punchline. The question remains, did society become too sensitive or did comedy become too lazy? The influence spans decades of boundary-pushing comedy. From South Park to The Chappelle Show, comedians cite Blazing Saddles as proof that offensive humor can serve a social purpose when wielded with genuine anti-racist intention. The movie created a template. You can say anything if you're clearly on the right side of history, and smart enough to make the real target the people who deserve it. Bad comedians learned the wrong lesson. Good comedians learned everything. It started as a disaster, and became a classic. Green vomit, lawsuits, studio panic, banned screenings, a lead actor replacement, a theme singer who didn't know he was in a comedy. Every single element that should have killed this movie somehow made it strong. Mel Brooks took every disaster and turned it into comedy gold. The chaos became the creativity. The problems became the punchlines. It started as a disaster that shouldn't have worked. A racist western written by a kid, directed by a madman, starring a replacement actor, with a theme song performed under false pretenses. But somehow that beautiful disaster became a comedy classic that changed cinema forever. If you're into strange movie secrets and weird Hollywood history where chaos creates masterpieces, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started with stories this insane.